Okay, think about this. Ever held back saying something in English? Maybe worried about, getting the grammar just right.
Oh, definitely.
What?
Or maybe hesitated to wear something you really like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because of that little voice going, uh-oh, what are people going to think? It's like you're lugging around this invisible backpack full of other people's opinions.
It can feel really heavy, can it? And well, that's what we're getting into today. How to maybe lighten that load a bit.
That's some freedom.
Yeah, freedom from feeling judged all the time so you can just show up as yourself. It's not about being rude or anything.
No, no, it's about having the space to speak, to grow, maybe even mess up sometimes without being totally paralyzed by that fear.
Exactly. And we've been digging into some really helpful stuff from the English Leap podcast. They had this great episode called Stop Caring What People Think.
Right. So we pulled out some key ideas, some like practical strategies from that deep dive to help you, listening right now, break free a little.
Yeah, our mission here is kind of twofold. First, let's
Yeah.
try and figure out where this fear even comes from. Why has it got such a grip?
Okay.
And second, we want to give you some real practical ways to spot it, see how it affects you, and crucially, start moving past it.
Yeah.
Especially, with English learning, but also just personal growth generally.
Okay, so let's start there. The roots. Why is it so hard to just not care? It feels almost built in.
It really is deeply ingrained, often goes way back to when we were kids. Think about school, right?
Uh-huh.
You put your hand up, maybe you give the wrong answer.
Yeah.
And what happens? Maybe some kids giggle or point.
Or even just the teacher looks a bit disappointed.
Oh, exactly. That feeling, that little sting of embarrassment of being wrong in front of everyone, that sticks.
I could almost feel it now, just thinking about that feeling of being, like, exposed.
Precisely. And those moments, even small ones, repeated over time, they teach us something. They teach us that maybe it's safer to just keep quiet or try really hard not to make mistakes, to seek approval.
So it becomes a habit. Like this default setting, we don't even question.
Yeah, almost automatic, like you're constantly performing for this invisible crowd you carry around in your head.
That invisible crowd idea
Mm.
that really hits home. Because often, the judgments we're scared of aren't even happening, are they?
That's a massive realization. People are mostly wrapped up in their own lives.
Right. Their own worries, their own insecurities.
Completely. They're the star of their own movie. They're not analyzing your every move.
But the podcast had that great analogy, like everyone's busy adjusting their own stage lights.
Exactly. They're focused on their performance, not watching every tiny detail of yours.
That thought alone is kind of freeing, isn't it?
It's huge. You might be agonizing over, say, mispronouncing a word slightly or pausing for a second too long.
While the other person is just trying to follow the conversation.
Yeah, or thinking about what they're going to say next, or if they left the stove on, they're probably not dissecting your English the way you are.
It reminds me of seeing a typo in an email or text. You notice it for like half a second.
And then you move on. It rarely stops you understanding the message, right?
Not at all.
Well, it's pretty much the same with speaking. A little grammatical slip up, an accent. Usually it doesn't get in the way of actual communication.
And knowing that, really believing that, must lower the pressure cooker feeling.
Absolutely. It takes the stakes down. You feel a bit more brave, maybe, willing to try things out with the language.
Experiment a bit more, yeah. Without that intense fear of being judged for every little thing. It's like, phew, okay.
And ironically, when you relax about it, when you're less focused on avoiding mistakes for others, you often end up communicating better. Your fluency can actually improve.
Okay, but let's be real. Sometimes people do criticize, right?
They do. That definitely happens. Someone might comment on your accent or maybe point out a mistake.
So what then? How do you handle that without letting it crush you?
This is where another really important shift comes in. What someone says, especially criticism, it often says more about them than it does about you.
How do you mean?
Well, their judgment, their comment, it might actually be coming from their own stuff, their insecurities, their limitations. It could be a projection.
So like, if someone makes fun of your accent,
Maybe, just maybe, it's because deep down they feel a bit insecure that they haven't learned another language, or they feel uncomfortable stepping outside their comfort zone. It's not necessarily about your accent being bad.
it reframes it completely. It takes the sting out a bit.
It helps you not internalize it as, oh, I'm terrible at this. Instead, you can think, okay, that's their perspective, maybe based on their own baggage.
The podcast put it brilliantly, I thought. Your accent isn't a flaw. It's evidence.
Evidence of bravery, proof you're learning, challenging yourself.
Yeah. Every word you speak in another language is like a little badge of courage.
Totally. It shows effort, progress. If someone has an issue with that, honestly, that reflects on their mindset, not your ability.
Okay, so we start letting go of needing everyone's approval. We reframe criticism. What happens next? Where does that freed up energy go?
It goes back to you. When you start pouring energy into managing what others think, you suddenly have all this mental bandwidth available for, well, for actual growth.
Learn.
Exactly.
Right.
Think how much time we waste worrying. Reclaim that. Invest it in getting better.
The podcast talked about this switch from trying so hard to sound smart to just focusing on asking questions. I loved that.
Oh, that's a game changer. It shifts everything. Instead of feeling this pressure to have all the answers, you lean into curiosity.
Like that workshop story they shared, where loads of people were confused, but nobody wanted to ask the dumb question.
Yes, until one person finally did, and suddenly, like, half the room breathed a sigh of relief because they were wondering the same thing.
It's so true. We do that, don't we? Especially when learning. Pretend we get it all.
And it holds us back. Real confidence isn't about knowing everything. It's about being okay with not knowing and being brave enough to find out.
So for English learners, ask the question, even if it feels really basic.
Absolutely. Asking for clarification, asking, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It's not weakness, it's smart. It's how you learn. Curiosity is like your superpower here.
But often, what stops us is wanting everything to be perfect first, right?
Yeah.
That feeling of, I can't speak until my grammar is flawless.
Oh, perfectionism. Yeah, that's a big trap. It's this excuse engine that keeps us stuck. It tells you you're not ready.
But you're never perfectly ready.
Exactly. It's like learning to swim. You can read books about buoyancy and strokes forever.
But eventually you have to actually get in the water.
And probably splash around and cough a bit. You learn by doing, by making those mistakes.
I totally did that with English. I held back for ages wanting perfect grammar. But guess what?
Your grammar only really improved when you started actually using it.
Bingo. When I started talking, making mistakes, getting corrected sometimes, then it clicked.
That's the paradox, isn't it? The mistakes are part of the process. So you got to shift the goalpost. Forget flawless, aim for fearless beginning. Just start.
Get some momentum going.
Yes. Momentum over perfection every time.
Okay, so we ditch perfectionism, we embrace curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
but how do we actually build that confidence, the courage to just start speaking, even when we feel shaky?
Well, the key thing from the podcast was confidence isn't just there. It's not something you have or don't have. It's a skill.
Like building muscle.
Exactly like building muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah.
Those people who seem super confident speaking English,
Yeah.
they've probably just put in more reps, as they say. They've shown up more often, even when it felt awkward or scary at first.
So it's not magic, it's
Yeah.
just accumulated practice.
Very much. And you can start small, really small. The podcast had great examples,
Like what?
like just saying hi to someone in English
Uh-huh.
or joining an online chat for 5 minutes, sharing one thought in a group,
Okay, manageable.
reading a paragraph out loud to yourself, recording your voice for 30 seconds, commenting on an English video online. Tiny acts of courage.
Each one builds on the last.
Exactly. They add up. It proves to yourself, hey, I can do this. Over time, that feeling grows.
I like that. It's built, not found.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we build that confidence muscle,
Mm-hmm.
what's next?
A really powerful shift is to consciously try and replace that fear with curiosity.
Okay, fear versus curiosity. Tell me more.
Well, fear tends to shut you down, right? It asks, what if I mess up? What if they laugh?
Yeah, but puts you on the defensive. All about avoiding bad outcomes.
Exactly. But curiosity opens things up. It asks, what could I discover here? What might I learn from this chat?
So it changes the whole frame of the conversation.
Completely. Instead of feeling like you're on trial, you start feeling intrigued, interested in the interaction itself.
The podcast mentioned treating conversations like little experiments. That sounds less scary.
Doesn't it? It takes the pressure off. You're not aiming for a perfect performance. You're just gathering data, seeing what happens.
So the focus shifts from how am I doing to what's happening here.
Precisely. And the people you're talking to, they stop feeling like judges and start feeling more like fellow explorers,
Yeah.
part of your learning journey.
And if you do make a mistake, with curiosity goggles on,
It's just data. It's not failure. It's, okay, that word didn't quite land, or, maybe I should structure that sentence differently next time. It's information.
they had that great little exercise suggestion too.
Oh, yeah, the reflection questions.
Instead of beating yourself up afterwards.
Ask yourself, what surprised me in that conversation? or what actually went pretty well.
I love that. It forces you to look for the positives, the learning points, instead of just zooming in on the flaws.
It's such a simple, powerful reframing tool. And really, that's the core message, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems like it. The real progress happens when you shift your focus
Away from trying to be perfect and impress everyone.
and towards being curious, being brave in small ways, and just focusing on your own growth.
Whether it's English or, anything where you're putting yourself out there, it's about turning inward, focusing on your journey, not the imagined audience.
Absolutely. So the encouragement is really just to try it. Put these ideas into action.
Take those small steps. Show up. Speak up. Live a little louder, maybe, without that fear constantly whispering in your ear.
Right. And maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Go for it.
Just consider this.
Uh-huh.
How different could your learning journey feel? How much more confident could you become if you really truly leaned into curiosity more and self-criticism less? If you focus squarely on your own growth instead of worrying about those imagined judgments?
Yeah, definitely something worth thinking about.